The VSTConnections window is an area in CUBASE where you can define all your audio inputs, outputs, group effects, and external effects. It is found in the Devices menu or by pressing the key command F4. The first thing you'll probably want to do is make sure you have some audio inputs so you can record. Make sure you watch the video on audio and MIDI setup so that you have your audio card properly set up first. Let's say you have a keyboard with stereo outputs hooked up to your sound card into inputs 1 and 2, or left and right. You'll want to create a stereo bus to accommodate this. Let's remove any buses that we already have here and start from scratch. Select the bus, right-click, and choose Remove Bus. You can say yes to this. It's just saying that this bus is in use somewhere in CUBASE, but don't worry because we're going to make our own new ones. Click the Add Bus button and add a stereo bus. For our example, we are hooking up our keyboard's outputs to the stereo 1 and 2 inputs of our sound card, so we don't need to change anything under the device port. Inputs 1 and 2 are automatically selected for us, but we could change them here if we needed to. You've probably noticed that I have lots of inputs on my sound card. You may only have 2, maybe 4 or 8. Let's just move ahead assuming that you have more than 2 inputs on your sound card. If you don't have any more inputs, then this is all the setup you'll need to do. We can name the input by double-clicking here. Let's call it Keys. Now suppose we have a microphone hooked up to input 3 on our sound card. Let's make another bus, but this time we'll make it mono. Set the input to number 3. Now if you only have 2 inputs, left and right, you can do this. Set the input to the first input or the left side. Let's call it mic. If you have multiple inputs, you can name each one and have a different input assigned to it. And then of course, plug all of our gear into the different inputs of our sound card. If you only have 2 inputs, you'll need to plug and then unplug your gear into your sound card. So the input names won't really make sense if they're labeled keys and mic. Why don't we make them more generic by calling them stereo and mono? These names will now pop up in the mixer or in the input section of the inspector. See the video on recording audio and the mixer coming up. You can even have a 5.1 surround sound input bus. Let's say you were recording a surround mix of 6 channels. Click on the Add Bus and choose 5.1, and then select your inputs. All the same stuff I've just showed you with the inputs can be done with the outputs. Once you have the perfect setup, you'll probably want to store presets. The inputs and the outputs have individual preset selections. It's good not to have a whole bunch of inputs and outputs turned on and running. This uses up a small bit of processing power that can become noticeable if you have a large project running. By using presets, you can have inputs for just your drums, just guitars, vocals, etc. Only use what you need, then turn it off. One interesting thing to note here is that if you have a stereo audio file and you are sending it to a multi-channel bus, such as a 5.1 bus, you can create something called child buses. When you create a child bus, it acts like a stereo sub-bus within the bus. Confused? Well, for example, if you have a stereo audio file, you can send it easily to the left and right surround outs. This makes things so much easier. You can also define a default input. This is used whenever you make a new audio track input. Group and effects are covered in Volume 2 of this series. External effects are covered in Volume 3. The last tab, Studio, is for when you are auditioning audio. For example, when you're in the sample editor and you want to hear what you are editing, but don't want to hear it through effects or through the main outputs, you can define what output your auditioning will go out to. In addition to this, there is a master fader for your auditioning in the mixer so that you can control the level. In terms of connectivity, CUBASE has this covered.